2005, a glorious year when it comes to professional wrestling. Longtime wrestling fans look back on it with some fondness for the madness, some remembrance for the sadness, all while simultaneously scratching their head, wondering what the fuck WWE and TNA were thinking. But I'm not here to talk about TNA, total non-stop action, not tits and oos. I'm here to talk about what WWE did, so let's do that. I'm John Renton with the retro review of WWE Survivor Series 2005. November 27th, 2005. Just mere days after Eddie Guerrero's tragic, sudden, and gut punch of a goddamn passing. No wrestler's death affected me more and still affects me more than Eddie Guerrero. I'm not saying that Eddie would have been able to wrestle much longer, but my God, he was taken way too soon. I wish he was still here. And you saw wrestlers with various, armbands, EG for Eddie Guerrero. And that was nice. And yeah, Survivor Series 2005, an event I haven't watched for a while, due in large part to it taking place so soon after the passing of Eddie Guerrero. I decided in my randomized rewatching of some older Survivor Series, I decided to check back on this. And you know what? Despite a few wrinkles, one particular match that was absolutely terrible, and some commentary where basically they were just arguing with each other rather than calling the goddamn action, because that's something that wrestling fans absolutely want on their pay-per-views that they were paying a good $40 for. There was some pretty goddamn good action, and some good storylines, and some memorable moments. One of the best endings to a Survivor Series in a while. One of the best elimination matches in Survivor Series history, at least of the last 20 years. And I know that's kind of grading on a curve, as it were, but still. So they were in the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, Michigan. They had about 15,000 fans and 400,000 pay-per-view buys. So, like I've done with other retro reviews, let's talk about some older pay-per-views, like older Survivor Series, a couple of Survivor Series after this, and then the 2005 lineup. So, Survivor Series 2003 in Dallas, Texas, about 13,500 fans, 450,000 pay-per-view buys, where Stone Cold Steve Austin was out of WWE for like 3 weeks. No, really. I mean, maybe it was a month, but still. Survivor Series 2004 in Cleveland, Ohio at the Gund Arena. 7,500 fans, 325,000 pay-per-view buys. Ouch. So this went up significantly from 2004, but was still down from 2003. Survivor Series 2006, arguably one of the most fun Survivor Series, at least from what I remember. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 15,400 fans, 383,000 pay-per-view buys. So, okay, this was above that. And then we go to Survivor Series 2007 in Miami, Florida, 12,500 fans and 341,000 pay-per-view buys. And that one, if I recall correctly, had Shawn versus Orton, where Shawn couldn't use the super kick, and actually it was a pretty well-worked match, as I recall. But nevertheless, let's go back to the 2005 listings. New Year's Revolution, the first ever New Year's Revolution, one of three. One of three New Year's Revolution pay-per-views that they did, because then they realized, hey, wait a second, having pay-per-views at this point, right before the Rumble, probably not the best idea. This was the famous San Juan, Puerto Rico show. It actually had some pretty good stuff. It did have the Elimination Chamber, 15,764 fans, 270,000 pay-per-view buys. Not great, but not necessarily awful. I think it did better than Armageddon 2004, if I recall correctly. So that being said, well-received show. It wasn't the best, but the crowd certainly was pretty electric when they wanted to be. Definitely not as electric as the Backlash 2023 crowd. My God, that was incredible. I was so worried that Bad Bunny was actually going to amp himself up so much that he was going to be too tense. He was going to be like that camping trip that was intense. Royal Rumble 2005, Fresno, California, 12,000 fans, 575,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, despite the fact that that one had some issues, it had a memorable ending to the Rumble, because you had Vince not only tearing both of his quads, which was hilarious, especially for being the pervert that he turned out to be, and the fact that Batista and John Cena did the unplanned going over the top at the same goddamn time. The fact that that apparently wasn't planned. I don't even know if they could have planned it like that. That was incredible. It also had Heidenreich against Undertaker in a casket match, and yeah. No Way Out, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 9,500 fans and 240,000 pay-per-view buys. Ouch. Then again, Big Show and JBL in a barbed wire steel cage match. Yeah, that'll put butts in seats. Mania 21, Staples Center, just over 20,000 fans and 1.09 million pay-per-view buys. And that was a pretty good Mania. I mean, despite the fact they threw Christy Hemme out. Poor Christy Hemme. She did not deserve to get ridiculed like she did. That was so terrible. It didn't work. And I mean, I'm not even knocking her. I'm not even knocking her. It wasn't going to work. Lita got injured and they're like, hey, let's just throw Christy Hemme out there. Poor Christy. It did launch Batista and Cena into the stratosphere. Ironic given who I was just talking about. But there we are. And then we come way back down for Backlash, which was in New Hampshire. And at 14,000 fans and about 320,000 pay-per-view buys. So still above No Way Out and above New Year's Revolution. And obviously it was going to be a big drop from WrestleMania. And then Judgment Day in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have 12,000 fans and 220,000 pay-per-view buys. That had Cena and JBL in the main event, if I recall correctly. Backlash 05 also had Batista and Triple H in the rematch. We go to One Night Stand and the Hymenstein Ballroom. Talk about busting that open right there. 2,500 fans, 325,000 pay-per-view buys. So basically it did better than Backlash. It basically did better than either of the big two, Rumble or Mania. That's pretty goddamn good. No wonder Vince McMahon decided to relaunch and then completely ruin the ECW brand. Though you could argue they needed to reshape it a bit, given the fact a lot of the guys that were ECW originals, even by 05-06, were beat up to the point they couldn't be on TV or were dead. So we go to Vengeance. It's in Paradise, Nevada. Just under 10,000 fans. And 420,000 pay-per-view buys. Now that was probably due in large part to Batista and Triple H having a Hell in a Cell match. It actually was pretty goddamn good, all things considered. Naturally, Triple H put over one of his best friends in 3 straight matches. He couldn't do that for other people. That would have made too much sense. Great American Bash in Buffalo with 8,000 fans and 233,000 pay-per-view buys. Okay, a little bit better than Judgment Day. The SmackDown branded pay-per-views were not doing great. SummerSlam at the MCI Center, the home of Starrcade 97 through 2000. So, yeah, the MCI Center. Who remembers MCI? Who remembers those ads? So, nevertheless, 18,176 fans and 650,000 pay-per-view buys. We had Jericho and Cena, and we had a pretty solid undercard. We did have JBL and Batista, I believe, also. Yeah. But Unforgiven were in Oklahoma City, former stomping ground of Cowboy Bill Watts and Mid-South Wrestling. And also Leroy McGurk. Thank God that racist son of a bitch went blind. That being said, 8,000 fans and 243,000 pay-per-view buys. So, okay, a little bit better than Great American Bash. And that was a Raw pay-per-view, I believe. No Mercy was a SmackDown pay-per-view. It was also the last pay-per-view that Eddie Guerrero was involved in. Him versus Batista in the main event. And it was in Houston. 7,000 fans, 219,000 pay-per-view buys. Ouch. So we go Taboo Tuesday. San Diego, 6,000 fans, 174,000 pay-per-view buys. That I believe had Triple H and... I think it had Triple H and Flair, if I recall correctly. Taboo Tuesday was a little bit messy. They went from Taboo Tuesday in 04-05 to Cyber Sunday for 06-07-08, I believe. And then we go to Armageddon right after this event. Providence, 8,000 fans, 320,000 pay-per-view buys. A lot of that might have had to do with the fact that they were co-promoting and having Raw and SmackDown superstars on it. At least from what I recall. And New Year's Revolution. 2006, Albany, New York, 11,000 fans, 345,000 pay-per-view buys. And then we finish up with the 2006 Rumble. Miami, 16,000 fans, 585,000 pay-per-view buys. Let's get to the goddamn review already. I just like going over these facts and figures because, one, it's fun to talk about them. And also, sometimes when there's not enough material to basically do, full detailed reviews, I can do this. And I can also have fun. And sometimes people like the facts and figures. So, the package on the big matches, Joey Styles, Jerry the King Lawler, and Jonathan Coachman, who had to be one of the worst commentators this side of Mark Madden. I don't know who Coach sucked up to or sucked off to get such a goddamn long-running job. Because he was god-awful. I mean, then again, maybe he sucked up to goddamn Vince. In fact, I know he had to. That's the only reason that Coach, with his limited abilities, would actually be able to be a commentator. There's one thing about being a heel commentator, but he was so goddamn rotten, he couldn't do anything right. He would try to talk over people, and all it reminded me of was basically the future heel Michael Cole. He was trying to channel Jesse Ventura when Jesse Ventura could take a shit they could do better commentary than Jonathan Coachman. Joey Styles also, as good as Joey was in ECW, not necessarily that great here. And also, this is coming right off of when he not... Let me just say something else about Joey Styles before I continue on with this. And Lawler has his own issues, and I've talked about that stuff before, but Joey Styles had made a comment during One Night Stand about Mike Awesome, doing a suicide dive, and it's a shame he didn't take his own life, is what he said. That's, the tope, whatever you want to call it. Now, yes, we know how Mike Awesome's life ended. It's very unfortunate that it ended the way it did. I believe it was in February or March of 2007. Oh, but Mike Awesome sold everybody out. Sold out ECW, sold out the families of ECW. Mike Awesome was owed substantial amounts of money, and Joey Styles tends to forget that because Joey Styles apparently is a crackpot idiot. Mike Awesome, I'm not going to say is a perfect individual or was a perfect individual. May he rest in peace. But he had every right to want every penny owed to him from Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman stiffed a whole lot of people because Paul Heyman was a terrible businessman. So maybe Joey could have remembered that, pulled his head out of his fucking goddamn ass, and not made that comment about Mike Awesome. Yeah, it hasn't aged all that well, but even at the time, I was like, okay, why'd he say that? Oh, because he's upset because Mike Awesome wanted to get paid for his goddamn job. So maybe Joey should have fucking remembered that. But then again, Joey is a fucking crackpot, so what the fuck does he know? So, Cole and Taz called SmackDown. And then they would mix them up, for the co-promoted show, or co-promoted matches. The Heat match was Juventud versus Simon Dean. That'll put butts in seats. So, Booker with Sharmell against Chris Benoit for the U.S. title. It's best of 7 series. And look, this was well worked. This was shades of their TV title, best of 7. They actually turned it into a best of 8 matches because I think the last match was inconclusive. I think due to interference with Finlay, if I remember right. Maybe I'm misremembering. And it was well worked. I can't really watch a Chris Benoit match anymore. I just can't. There are certain things that I just can't take. Yes, he was one of the best goddamn wrestlers of his generation. He was intense. He could do incredible shit. And he also murdered his fucking wife and child. And that's unfucking forgivable. People that want him in the goddamn Hall of Fame, when he did that, no. After missing the diving headbutt, basically Booker ends up getting his feet on the ropes in a pin, and Sharmell holds his feet on there 1, 2, 3. Now, it was well worked again, but it's hard to watch a Benoit match. Melina then got this match with Trish by tying up Trish on a chair while Eminem watched. Man, they made Nitro a goddamn cuck, didn't they? So Trish with Mickey, who had just showed up on Raw recently as a Stalker fan. Actually turned out to be one of the best storylines that they did. So Trish took on Melina, and, it was actually a pretty good women's title match. Not that both of these women can't work. Melina was still in her infancy being on the main roster. Trish was pretty much well established. And Trish does a dive onto everybody. Shockingly good despite being rushed. And it's not, again, like either of these women couldn't work, but they did rush a lot of this. Joey and Taz were yelling at each other because, again, that's exactly what we want on a goddamn wrestling broadcast, is for our commentators to argue routinely. There was a lot of that on there. This event, as far as in-ring action, besides one match, was pretty goddamn good. But Jesus. Interference by Eminem. They got kicked out. The referee could have DQ'd easily. Melina, just kept, she kept screaming or whatever at one point. I knew a girl that was a screamer. I should call her at some point. So, Mickey helps Trish dodge. And then we get a modified Bulldog 1, 2, 3. Not bad, not great, well worked. Package on Flair and Triple H. History with Evolution. History, just as far as being mentor and student, shall we say. And then student wanting to basically kill the mentor. Flair was the Intercontinental Champion at the time, by the way, and I think made all of 3 defenses. He probably defended it more on goddamn house shows. I don't think he defended it even much on TV after beating, was it Carlito? I think he beat Carlito, if I remember right, on the goddamn, on Unforgiven, if I recall. And then he would lose it to Shelton Benjamin sometime in February of 2006. Triple H versus Flair, last man standing match. And basically, this is Triple H beating the absolute teetotal motherfucking shit out of Flair for a while. Hitting him with a screwdriver. Hitting him with a screwdriver. It does not look like he's using a screwdriver. He's just fisting him and working on his instrument right there. He's tooling him around. And Flair is bleeding badly. Pretends to be shocked. Flair did not have nearly the range, even by this point. He was living off of his reputation. He could get people invested. But, look, rose-tinted glasses being taken off. Flair, after, 99, 2000. You could argue maybe that match with Undertaker at WrestleMania 18. Even, maybe into 03. But after that, it got sad to watch. Because the man had, drank himself into a goddamn stupor so many times. And was also approaching 60. I think he was 58, 59 when he retired. Well, the first time. So, we got a suplex on the floor. We got good action here. Do not misunderstand. There was some good shit here. But then, Flair was bleeding once more. Just more and more and more. We got a spine buster on the floor. And he's yelling at Flair to quit. And then Flair grabs his balls. And then we get a backdrop through the Spanish announcer's table. A chair at Triple H's head. He bites his quad. Why not? And we get leg targeting, a step spot. We get a pedigree. Flair somehow gets back up. We get another pedigree. Flair gets back up. Third pedigree. A sledgehammer. Why don't you call my name? And finally, Flair stays down. It was 27 minutes. It didn't drag. It was actually one of the best matches of 2005 on WWE programming, pay-per-view or not. It worked. So then a stretcher for Flair, and Flair would actually show back up at the 06 Rumble. Again, Flair was the Intercontinental Champion, which means the Intercontinental title was not defended on television or pay-per-view in that whole time. And I know they only had Armageddon 2005 and New Year's Revolution 2006, but still. So, Orton was talking to Team SmackDown. Batista calls himself the leader. Nah, leader. Batista Bomb, the leader. And then Edge and Lita show up to do an edition of the Cutting Edge. I really wanted to call it something else. Put an N somewhere if you can figure it out. Dimitri Young, who is the Tigers' designated hitter at this point. Detroit Tigers for those across the pond. Baseball. He knocks baseball. Edge does. And how the Tigers haven't won a title in years. And the Pistons failed to win the finals. And then he calls Dimitri Mark Henry, which I really hope was unintentional, because I was like, they look nothing alike. But then Dimitri wants to say something, and he says, well, I hit balls, you don't have any. Lita tries to chime in, and really, Lita kind of got the shaft right there. She just got absolutely just railed, for no reason. I mean, she was being basically just tossed around, and just everything was just jammed all over her. I'm done. I'm sorry. I can't help it. But she was just getting shafted constantly. To the point, no wonder she left. Now, it was what it was. It was a decent segment. It was a way to cool the crowd down, I guess. Well, you would have thought they would have changed the ring mat or the ring, covering. Nope, they didn't change that. There was blood all over the goddamn place. Angle then got so pissed at the fans that he recently had been having the tech or production crew censor the "You Suck" chants. So it's Cena and Angle with Daivari, Sean Daivari, as the special guest referee, who is in Angle's corner, had recently become his manager. And after Muhammad Hassan basically had been cast aside because they decided to run a really stupid angle with the guy. It's not his fault. They ran a stupid angle with him. The crowd really made this match. In fact, honestly, outside of the crowd, the action was good. But it was just an angle match, pun intended. Daivari got knocked down at one point. A second ref came in. That second ref got knocked down. Third ref came in. Angle slam for 2. A superplex for 2. The third ref came down. Daivari got thrown back in. Angle's trying to stop Charles Robinson from coming in because he's a SmackDown ref. Daivari gets laid out with a DDT. Charles Robinson comes in. The FU, now the AA. 1, 2, 3. Again, the crowd really just made it there. This wasn't a great match, but it was a great, ride as far as, just passion from the crowd because they were split. Let's go Cena. Cena sucks. You could argue this feud with Angle is really what started to turn the goddamn crowds really against him. Even though he was getting boos before, this is really where things were starting to really turn bad. And then, speaking of turning bad, Teddy Long, along with Palmer Cannon, who didn't last very long, took on, and for good reason, people were bullying him. That's not good that they did that, but still, Teddy Long took on Eric Bischoff. There was a Raw and a SmackDown rep in there, and the fact that anybody thought this is a good idea for a pay-per-view match is ridiculous. This is a Vince McMahon idea. There's no other person that would have thought this is a good idea. Palmer was useless. At one point, Eric Bischoff is choking out Teddy Long in Detroit. That ought to be just absolutely just mind-numbing for some people. Boring chance. A sleeper hold by Bischoff, a shoot to the head. And then the Boogeyman shows up. And after about 20 years, and I like the Boogeyman, don't get me wrong, they just mistimed this. He ends up choking Bischoff, hits pump handle slam, and then Teddy Long gets the victory. Yeah, they thought that was a good idea to put on pay-per-view. And then a package on the main event. Batista was over like some kind of god for like a couple-year period. Like, it was insane. They were starting to really react to him at the end of 2004 and into 2005. And then they were kicking it into gear by the time the Rumble happened. And then by the time Triple H did Batista did the thumbs up, thumbs down thing like Triple H did to Orton, there you are. So, Team SmackDown, Orton, Batista, Lashley, Rey Mysterio, and JBL. A lot of feuds, a lot of weird alliances. Against Team Raw, Shawn Michaels, Big Show, Kane, Carlito, and Chris Masters. The entrances took about 4 years or 12 minutes. The definition of a main event, though, they paced us well. Lashley was still, was like fresh out of OVW. And 2005 Lashley doesn't look any different than Lashley now. I mean, he's trimmed down a little. Not that he was bulky, but he's trimmed down a little bit. It's like literally, the guy's almost 50, and he looks just incredible. So, the commentary argued so goddamn much. I was just like, could somebody just cut Coach's mic or his Achilles like that kid did in Pet Sematary? I mean, either or. I mean, I'm good with whatever. So, who was going to establish brand white supremacy? Well, that's what Vince would have wanted. So, well paced for the first third. They shined Lashley. They gave him some good spots. He got hit with a chokeslam, though, trying to slam Shawn. Kane hit him with a chokeslam while standing outside the ring. Shawn covered 1, 2, 3. So, it's down 5-4 in favor of Raw. And then the Spinebuster pins Kane. Now, Batista was bandaged up because he had been he got in a match with Orton, I believe, just before this on Raw. He'd been beat up, I think got hit by a car, if I remember right. Some of these angles are mixing up a little bit in my head. The Spinebuster pins Kane. And then Big Show and Kane basically decided to just double chokeslam Batista soon after that, and Batista's gone because he was actually legitimately injured. He was fighting through injuries, but then he would be taken out by Mark Henry, apparently legitimately. Accidentally, I mean, I'm not blaming Mark, but that necessitated the title being held up. And Angle and Mark Henry closing the 2006 Rumble because they had to have Taker collapse the ring instead of just having the goddamn Rumble close the show. Proving that they didn't see Ray as a main eventer. So, then everybody had to team up on show. Clothesline from Hell, 619, RKO, another clothesline from Hell, and a splash, 1, 2, 3. Show's gone. So, there we are. Now it's getting down to the titty gritty, as we were saying. JBL ends up pinning Carlito. And then Ray ends up pinning Chris Masters. After he basically hit a leg drop that went right on goddamn Masters' neck. His thick, veiny neck. And now it's down 3-1. It's Shawn versus 3 members of Team SmackDown for about a minute. Because Ray does the Shelton Benjamin springboard off the ropes and gets hit with the Sweet Chin music, 1, 2, 3. JBL gets hit with the Sweet Chin music right after that. And that's it, so it's 1-1. And then JBL ends up coming back in a little bit later. hitting, or trying to hit Shawn with a chair. And then he manages to fight out of that, but turns into an RKO snap. 1, 2, 3. Randy Orton, for the third year in a row, is the sole survivor. Pretty good streak home, by the way. And he's all celebrating the SmackDown crews out there, at least some of the SmackDown, some of the people. Brian Kendrick and Paul London are there. And then you have the Dicks. No, they had a team called the Dicks. They also had a team on Raw called the Heartthrobs. Team them up, they'd be the Dick Throbs. The veiniest of teams. Matt Hardy was also there. Paul Burchill, before Katie Lee came along. My God, how incredible is she? And various other people are there. And then suddenly, and this is after, by the way, that Orton and his dad had put Undertaker in a casket at No Mercy and burned it. And Undertaker would not be seen again until Gong. And we'd heard "We Want Taker" chants before this. In the closing moments of Shawn versus Orton, it's no offense against those two. They wanted to see Taker. So we hear the Undertaker's dong. Drew's bring the casket to the entranceway. Set up the casket. Lightning strikes. Door busts out. And he steps out through the flames. He gets in the ring and lays out everybody except Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy decided, his character shouldn't be taking a chokeslam. And then, apparently, reportedly, covering my ass here, got destroyed by JBL on Armageddon because of that, and actually got de-pushed a bit because of that. Yeah, probably should have taken a goddamn chokeslam from Undertaker. Even if Undertaker did cave Canyon's head in for absolutely no reason, besides the fact he was gay, and Undertaker's a piece of shit as a person, as a character, yeah, you definitely wanted to honor Undertaker. Well, he didn't do that, though. And he got beat the fuck up for it. Now, that being said, Undertaker was standing tall. Orton's all scared. His dad, by the way, who had hepatitis of some form and didn't tell Undertaker, and that could have been bad. Yay! No, really, that happened in No Mercy when Bob Orton bled. Was it there or was it the Hell in a Cell match? I think it was No Mercy. But nevertheless, that is the end of Survivor Series 2005. A pretty fun show overall. Not necessarily like the most blow-away, but from start to finish, despite that Bischoff and Teddy Long match, and despite the arguing among commentary, pretty good. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritland. I'll see you soon.